Well, hello, partners. Welcome to my channel. Another bibliophile shoots first. My name is Gregorio, and I have been on the range in June with a whole lot of other partners, reading a whole lot of Westerns. And I'm here to give a wrap-up of the Westerns that I've read this month. And I have read 7 Westerns. In my previous life, I read a total of 6 Westerns. So I have more than doubled my Western reading score. And what I'm going to do is tell you the books that I've read from least favorite to favorite. And my least favorite book was Valley of Vanishing Men by Max Brand. Now, a couple other booktubers have mentioned that Max Brand is a staple of Western authors, and he has written a lot of great Westerns. This is not a great Western. It's not even a very good book. I finished it the other day, and I've forgotten one of the main characters' names already. But he is a man on a mission who has been told that his brother has disappeared from a very rough town. And he goes out to explore why his brother has disappeared. And he meets a man named Jim Silver with a pet wolf, or a wild wolf that accompanies him. Kind of hard to tell the difference. And he has to track down where his brother went. And to be perfectly honest, I was just bored with this book. Not very exciting. So I cannot recommend this. I understand that maybe he wrote some other great Westerns, but not this one. The second up is Hondo by Louis L'Amour. I don't have a copy to show you because it was a library copy. And this was the second Louis L'Amour that I read this month. And it was okay. I enjoyed it. It was a man named Hondo who's traveling in the desert. He is attacked by Native Americans, and he has to go try to find a horse to take him back to civilization. And he finds a woman alone on her ranch with her young son and absent father. And it goes on from there, how he has to rescue this woman and rescue his son and fight off the Native Americans. What is surprising about this book is that I learned in my discussion with Mark at Book Time with Elvis and Scott Bryant over at the Bookish Bryants, is that this was actually a novelization of a John Wayne movie. I did not know that when reading the book. There is no indication on the book that it is a novelization. And it was just okay. The next is an audiobook, and perhaps one of the first Westerns ever written, and that was The Virginian by Owen Wister. And it is a story of a Virginian. He is never named, and they are out in the Wyoming territory. The book is narrated by another man who describes the exploits of the Virginian. And they go through a lot of details and shenanigans, but surprisingly, most of this book is about a romance between the Virginia and the Vermont school teacher that came to Wyoming. And to be perfectly honest, I just did not give a fig about the romance, which made the book drag a bit. I was wanting more of life on the range, but half of that is romance. But it's still an interesting book. And I learned that cowboys back in a time were called cowpunchers. I don't know, I guess they punched cows. But it is worthwhile. Not great, but worthwhile. The next after that was my first Louis L'Amour, The Quick and the Dead. I liked this one a lot more than I liked Hondo. Maybe because it was just fresh. It was really the first Western that I read for June on the range. Kind of the first. I'll explain that in a minute. And it's a story again of a lone traveler. And he is the guy who he rides alone. Yeah, that's how he's described. He rides alone. And he comes upon a family moving out west from back east, and they have a huge baggage train or a cart, and he has to defend them from some bad guys who think there's gold on that wagon, and a really bad guy who essentially wants to rape the wife, which is a rather darkish turn, I thought, for a Western. Maybe not, but of course, gunplay settles the issue, and that is that. This was a pretty good book. And you remember the end, and the quick and the dead comes from a comment. You have to be quick with a gun, or you are dead. The next after that was another audiobook, and this is one I truly enjoyed. I did not know how much I would like it at first, but it was a lot of fun. And that was True Grit by Charles Portis. And this is the story of a 14-year-old girl, Mattie Ross, who has to go avenge her father. And this is told as a remembrance of Mattie when she is a middle-aged woman looking back on her youth in the Oklahoma territories. Somewhere in the late 70s, 1870s, early 1880s, somewhere around there. And she is just a feisty little character. And you would not want to mess with that 14-year-old girl. The audiobook, I have to say, was narrated by Donna Tartt, the author of The Secret History and The Goldfinch. And she just did a magnificent job narrating this character, Mattie. And as an audiobook narration, I think it is one of the best that I've ever heard. And just the story she tells of how Mattie gets this marshal, Rooster Cogburn, who is a bit of a naughty, not say naughty, he lives above the law. He doesn't take his men in alive all the time. He kills them. And he doesn't seem to mind killing them. And that's the reason why Mattie hires him. And it is a very interesting dynamic that you have this 40-something man who's used to being on his own, and he's basically being pushed around by a 14-year-old girl. So, True Grit, very interesting, very entertaining. There are 2 movie versions of this, one with John Wayne and one with Jeff Bridges. I have not seen either one of them, and I think I'm going to skip because I really like the book and don't want the film to interfere with my enjoyment of those books. And now it comes to the last 2 books. I have to decide which book I liked more, or which book is the best, or which book is the most appropriate at this time. And last week, I would have switched the order of these 2 books, but the book I'm going to describe right now is Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. And this is technically a Western because it takes place in the Old West in the appropriate time period, but is it truly a Western? I have seen it described in some places as an anti-Western, and or a postmodern Western. And it is the story of a character named the Kid, who is never named, who has no home, and he heads out west, and he gets involved with a bunch of very unpleasant characters and goes on a scalping mission where they're essentially paid bounty for each scalp they bring in for Indians. And this is one of the most vicious books I have ever read. It is also one of the most beautifully written books that I have ever read. There are a few passages in here where you're going, wow, that is just beautiful writing. Even if McCarthy does stretch the grammar of the English language and avoid some common punctuation, like quotation marks, in his dialogue. And it also has one of the most evil characters, the judge. I was discussing this with a book group over at Criminali's channel, and one of my questions is the judge supposed to be a realistic character or a metaphor for human evil or the evil of war? And even though I have read this book 3 times now, I'm not sure I can answer that question. And I think that makes the book even better because it makes you think about these issues. And there is a final scene in this book with the judge, and it is just I almost say an obscene show of just wickedness. And you have to read it to find out. The last book is actually a very good book. It is The Oxbow Incident, and that is by Walter van Tilberg Clark. And this is the story of a lynching of supposed cattle rustlers who murdered a man, and a group of men who go out and find these 3 men who are supposedly done this crime and lynch them. It is obvious that these men are not guilty of this crime. And this is where I think the book stands out. And is the reason why I'm putting this as the best Western that I've read this month, because it shows you a dilemma. I don't want to go too much into spoiler territory, but there is a time when the 3 men are about to be lynched, and a character does not take action. He does not speak out. And this character is tormented by his lack of action, by the fact that he did not speak out at what he sees as injustice being done to these 3 men. And there is a penalty he pays in his mind for his lack of action. And that is a lesson this country needs to learn right now. If there is injustice, you must speak out. And you should read The Oxbow Incident, because it displays what moral courage should be. Thank you for watching and joining in on the range. Goodbye.